Good evening, everyone. I'm Zen Master Sebastian Rizzon, founder of the Mind Light Way School of Zen, and I host these Dharma talks on the third Thursday of every month and guided meditations on the first Thursday of every month from 7 to 8 p.m. You can also find our curated content on the Mind Light Way School of Zen YouTube channel. It's really good to see you all here tonight. I want to begin by talking about a common situation that may seem small, but it can reveal a lot about how our thoughts shape our experiences. Let's say you send someone a text message. A few hours pass and no answer comes back. At first, not much happened. A message was sent, no reply has come. But very quickly, your thoughts may start creating a story. You may think maybe they're upset. Maybe you said something wrong. Or maybe the silence touches on something deeper, a fear, a memory, a familiar pattern. Zen asks you to consider a very simple question. How do you know? The question isn't meant to dismiss how you feel. There are times when you do know, a pattern may be real, something may genuinely need your attention, but our thoughts can take uncertainty and turn it into something else completely different. At that point, the unanswered message isn't just an unanswered message. It's become part of a story. And the body responds. The chest tightens, the stomach turns. You might become tense and guarded. Before you realize it, you're not only experiencing what has happened, you're experiencing the weight your thoughts have placed on it. That doesn't only happen with messages. It can happen in a conversation, in family life, at work, or even in spiritual practice. Something occurs, then our thoughts create a story and react to it as if it were the truth. This is a common human experience. It's part of how the mind functions. But when we become overly attached to our conclusions, we can confuse our story with what is actually happening. We may be reacting to what we've added to it. This is where suffering takes root. Zen practice helps us see this more clearly. But we don't need to reject our thoughts, feelings, or beliefs. But it is helpful to recognize what they are and how they're affecting us. Thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are part of life. The challenge arises when the mind holds them so tightly that they obscure what's actually here. When I say meet the moment as it is, I mean responding to what is happening without being carried away by the story that our thoughts have added. This is where keeping an open mind about what you actually know becomes important. Being open to uncertainty doesn't mean becoming confused or indecisive. It doesn't mean doubting everything you think or feel. Sometimes a situation is clear. Sometimes intuition recognizes something before our thoughts can put words to it. The point is not to stifle your reactions or judge your feelings. The point is to realize how quickly thoughts can solidify into a narrative and not jump to conclusions before noticing what is actually happening. When we allow for a little uncertainty around our conclusions, the mind becomes more flexible, and we're less likely to cling to our narratives and be swept away by our fears, doubts, and habitual reactions. When the mind becomes more open and flexible, it becomes possible to see what's happening more clearly. Instead of immediately deciding what something means, we can pause and look again. We can experience what's happening before rushing to an explanation. From that place of openness, we can ask, what is actually happening right now? Often our thoughts immediately respond with an interpretation, a judgment, or a story. And when that happens, we can recognize it and ask, how do I know? These questions are not meant to produce the right answer. They help us look more carefully and meet our experiences with fresh eyes. And while these questions can be answered intellectually with another story, Zen invites you to embrace this openness with clarity so that you can have a direct experience of what is happening. So before we continue, let's practice meeting experience as it is before we name it through a meditation. We'll begin with some slow and deep breathing to relax our body and settle our thoughts. Then we'll bring these questions back into our awareness. There's no need to force the mind to be quiet or create a special state. Just return your attention to the present moment and to our practice. Look what's happening and experience it firsthand. Keep this question in your mind. What is here before you name it? As we move into the meditation, sit comfortably with your back and neck straight. Relax your shoulders. Let your hands rest in the mudra position. Right hand, left hand, touching thumbs, centered in your lap. Relax your face and jaw and make sure your teeth aren't touching. Begin breathing a little slower and a little deeper than usual. Let your breath settle into a slow and steady rhythm. Bring your attention to the center of your chest. Feel your heart. As you breathe in, gather the scattered energy of the thoughts in your head and bring them down into your chest. As you breathe out, let the body relax. Imagine that you're breathing with your heart. Let each breath bring the mind, heart, and body together. If thoughts come, don't follow them. If sounds come, don't dwell on them. If feelings come up in the body, feel them without turning them into words or a story. Keep returning to the breath. When you breathe in, gather everything present in your awareness. When you breathe out, Release everything you don't need in this moment. Now, bring this question into your awareness. What am I experiencing? Let the question bring you closer to what is happening now. Now go deeper. What is here before I name it? Don't answer with words. Stay with the breath and let the question remain open. If the mind starts explaining, just notice it and return to the question. What am I experiencing? If a memory or emotion comes up, don't fight it. Just let it go, let it pass, and return to the question. What is here before I name it? If an answer comes, don't hold on to it. Let it pass. Then ask yourself silently, how do I know? These questions aren't asking you to ignore any aspect of your experience. It's asking you to let go of any fixation. If there's clear knowing, let it be. If there's uncertainty, let the uncertainty be. Return to the question. Hold it in your heart. What am I experiencing? When your thoughts offer an answer, ask, what is here before I name it? When the mind gives an answer, ask, how do I know? Don't try to solve the questions. Let them bring you back to direct experience. Let your awareness become clear without fixation. Now, let go of the questions. Experience what is here as it is. Nothing to hold, just a clear mind. Thoughts and feelings pass through a clear mind, like clouds passing through a clear blue sky. When you're ready, slowly open your eyes. As we come back from the meditation, take a moment to recognize what happened. For some of you, the mind might have become quiet. For others, thoughts might have continued for the whole time. Either way, the practice is doing exactly what it's meant to do. Meditation isn't about getting rid of thoughts. It's a way to gain clarity about yourself, your mind, and how your thought processes work. A thought can appear without you having to believe it. A feeling can be present without it taking over your whole sense of self. A belief can be noticed before it hardens into something you feel you must defend. This takes practice because thought moves quickly. You're not always aware of this happening. Unhelpful narratives can take hold. An unanswered message could become evidence that someone doesn't care. An uncomfortable feeling can become a story about your whole life. This is what I mean by a full mind. It's filled with memory, fear, expectation, judgment, and opinion. It has very little space. When the mind is full, we may hear our own story more than the person in front of us. We might react before we see the situation for what it is. Having a clear mind doesn't mean there are no thoughts or feelings. It means you can notice a thought without immediately following it. You can feel an emotion without being carried away by it. The mind can respond without being trapped by the stories that appear. This clarity is important because it allows us to see something we usually miss. As the mind becomes less caught up in its stories, we can begin to recognize how thoughts, feelings, and beliefs arise and pass. From there, it becomes more possible to look into the nature of the mind itself. As we process our experiences in this way, we may start to notice that our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are less rigid than we realized. Everything is constantly changing, appearing and disappearing within our awareness. This insight naturally leads to a deeper question. If all experiences come and go, what is the nature of the mind that knows them? To understand this, it might be helpful to think of the nature of mind as empty. Empty mind points to something deeper. Empty mind doesn't mean blank or lifeless. It means the mind has no fixed nature. It's not confined or defined by any thought, feeling, memory, or belief. Because nothing in the mind has a fixed essence. Our experience is always changing and unfolding in unique ways. When we're not fixated or grasping at what arises, the natural unfolding can happen without the added suffering created by our attachments. Thoughts come and go, feelings can come and go, memories can come and go, and the mind is not limited by any of them. In practice, we're not trying to make the mind empty. The mind's nature is already empty. We practice so the mind becomes clear enough to recognize what it already is. And so we can stop mistaking passing thoughts, feelings, and beliefs for the whole truth. The conceptual knowledge that we possess is like a map. If you're traveling someplace, a map can help. It gives directions, it shows the route, it helps you understand where you are and where you're going. But the map is not the road. You can study the map and know the directions without ever taking a step. You can know a lot about the route without actually feeling the ground beneath your feet. Walking the path will completely change your perspective on what the map represents. Our ideas, beliefs, and narratives work in a similar way. They help us communicate, remember, plan, make decisions, and recognize patterns. But our ideas about our life only represent our map of what is actually here. Confusion seeps in when we forget this. We think this is how things really are. We might also carry very firm or even fixed ideas about ourselves, telling ourselves, this is who I am, and these are my characteristics. A fixed sense of identity like this can quietly shape how we think, feel, and act in ways we barely notice. There may be a real pattern there. It may be important to see, but the pattern is not the whole person. It's not the whole mind. And it can subtly limit what's possible in every moment. You might miss some of the things that are present that aren't on the map. The same thing happens with other people. Once we think we already know who someone is, we may stop listening. Instead of responding to the person in front of us, we respond to the image we're carrying. It can also happen with how we view our life. Your thoughts might think you're behind, or you're failing, or everything's going wrong. Or you might think you're succeeding and everything's working out. These thoughts might point to something useful, but they're still thoughts. They don't reflect the entirety of our life and what may be possible. Zen practice doesn't ask you to throw away your map. That would just become another idea to cling to. The point is to be able to use thought without being consumed or fooled by our thoughts. Remember what is useful, but don't mistake a memory for what's happening right now. Hold your beliefs lightly. Use them when they support wise action, but keep testing them through experience. Make sure your ideas serve your life instead of dictating the terms of it. Don't mistake the map for the terrain in front of you. Let's return back to the situation I brought up at the beginning, the unanswered message. No replies come back. That's what happened. Everything beyond that needs to be considered carefully. Your thoughts may construct a story. The body may have a visceral reaction. And before we realize it, we may be acting from the story instead of the situation. Without clarity on what's happening, the story can take over. We might feel anxiety, withdraw, become angry, or spend the next hour building a case about what's happening in our mind. With practice, we can create a little more space. We can remind ourselves to take some slow, deep breaths. We can learn to stop fixating on our thoughts, and we can listen to our heart. We can ask, what is actually happening? Uncertainty will always be present to a certain degree. Many times, there's nothing that needs to be done yet. Patience and allowing the situation to unfold may be what's needed. At other times, there may be a real issue that deserves attention. A compassionate conversation or thoughtful action may be necessary. A clear mind doesn't give us the answer for every situation. It gives us a clear perspective on the situation. That's why we practice. For this to work, clarity has to become part of how we live, not just something we understand. Zen doesn't give us rules to apply in every situation. The practice helps us see what is needed to meet the particular circumstances of this moment. This is why Zen has to become part of ordinary, everyday life. Whether you're driving, cleaning, working, listening, speaking, resting, answering a message, or having a difficult conversation, all of this should become part of the practice. These moments shouldn't be viewed as interruptions to practice. They're the proving grounds of the practice. If meditation only works when the room's quiet and everything feels peaceful, then it's extremely limited. The point is not to create a special state and hold on to it. The point is to apply the practice to the way we live. In my own training, some of the most important lessons came to me while doing very ordinary things. Cleaning the room, setting things up, practicing when I was tired, doing the dishes because they needed to be done. Our thoughts often expect the teaching to come from somewhere else. We seek out a special experience, a dramatic insight, or a powerful feeling. But Zen has to be practiced in the life we already have, especially when we're faced with challenges. How do you speak when you're frustrated? How do you respond when something doesn't go the way you wanted? This is where the teaching becomes lived. It's easy to have beautiful ideas about compassion, but it's harder to stay patient when everyone in the room is tired and the room still needs to be cleaned. It's easy to talk about a clear mind, but it's harder to keep a clear mind when someone misunderstands you, disagrees with you, or argues with you. That's exactly where the practice matters. Zen practice is fully engaging with what's happening in every moment and meeting it clearly as it is. One mistake is thinking practice means we have to get rid of thought. But thought is not the enemy. The question is whether we become fixated on our thoughts and allow them to take over. Another mistake is thinking Zen rejects concepts. Zen isn't against concepts. It prevents us from being trapped by them. A clear mind can still study, plan, work, teach, and make decisions. It just doesn't hold thoughts so tightly that it stops seeing what's happening. The most subtle mistake is turning Zen into another fixed idea. You think, no, oh, now I understand. Everything is mind. Everything is empty. Everything is one. Everything is just as it is. These words may point to something true, but once the mind clings to them, they stop being pointers and they become positions to defend. The attention shifts from pointing to direct experience to trying to convince ourselves or others of a conclusion. Instead of returning to what's actually happening, we become occupied with explaining, defending, or reinforcing ideas we have. Even a beautiful teaching can become a wall instead of a path. Even a useful teaching can become a problem if the mind clings too tightly to it. So Zen keeps bringing us back to this moment. What is the heart of your experience? Before explanation and belief, what is here? And when your thoughts have an answer, ask, how do I know? Meeting the moment as it is doesn't mean liking everything, approving of everything, or becoming passive. It means seeing clearly enough to respond to what is needed. Pain may need care. Conflict may call for a certain resolution. Exhaustion may need rest. A difficult situation may require you to take action. There's no single formula for every moment. A full mind often reacts from conditions of the past. A clear mind responds directly to the conditions in front of us. When the mind is preoccupied about creating narratives about the world, those narratives can quickly become fiction if we stop noticing what's actually happening. When the mind is clear, the stories can be useful, but they can be recognized as stories rather than reality itself. Then our intuition can guide us, without our thoughts preventing us from seeing what's actually here. The deeper point is not to stop the mind from making maps. Our thoughts create labels, memories, comparisons, predictions, and meaning. That's part of how we function. The problem begins when we forget that the map is still only a map. If we're not fully aware of what's happening, a thought can feel like reality. A feeling can become a trait that defines who we are. a story about our life can start to feel like the truth. Our beliefs can be something we feel we need to protect. Through Zen practice, we begin to see this more clearly. Instead of immediately believing whatever we're thinking, we begin to recognize when we have conditioned responses. Then we can experience what's actually happening more clearly. We notice when our thoughts begin to run wild, when a feeling is affecting our behavior, when a memory is shaping our perspective, when fear or anxiety is present, or when the mind is telling a story. Simply seeing these things for what they are creates a little space around them. It helps us recognize what's actually happening. Zen practice is simple, but it's not easy. It tells us to fully engage our attention with what is happening, to meet each situation as it is, and keep going like that through every moment. This means you have to keep your mind focused on what you're doing, whether you're working, talking, eating, or walking. This is what meditation looks like in everyday life. This is the heart of the practice. Tonight, we looked at how quickly our thoughts can turn our experiences into a story. As something happens, our thoughts immediately try to explain it. Sometimes the explanation helps us make sense of the situation, communicate with others, or decide what to do next. But even a useful explanation isn't the same as reality itself. It can highlight certain aspects of our experience while leaving out many of the details. And our perspective is always shaped by our assumptions and thought patterns. So when you leave here tonight, see how this is at play in your life. Notice how quickly your thoughts define a problem, make assumptions about another person, or create a story about yourself. Raise your awareness of when this is happening. When you notice it, give yourself space. Take a few slow, deep breaths. Feel your feet on the ground. Ask, what is actually happening? What am I adding? And what is needed now? You don't need to have the answers right away. Just return your attention to whatever you're doing and what's actually happening in this moment. This will allow you to keep your mind clear. It will allow you to see clearly and think clearly. And it will allow your heart to guide you. This is the heart of Zen. When your heart, mind, thinking, and action are together in the present moment, everything becomes clear. Thank you for coming tonight. I will take questions from the audience here or online. Feel free to drop some questions in the live chat, or if anybody here has any questions, there's definitely a lag, so go ahead here.
You were talking about unanswered questions, unanswered text, right? But unanswered text is also an answer in itself. Yeah, silence is also the answer.
So silence is an answer with a text.
Unanswered text.
An unanswered text. When you have an unanswered text, silence is an answer. What does it tell you, though?
You got too much. You attach yourself to it.
That you what?
You attach yourself too much to that text. You thought about it for too much. That person's gonna respond to you. I'm horrible at responding.
Yeah, I Yeah, I'm just curious though. What is the answer though?
So it depends who is not answering the text. So it changes depending on the person. Like if it's Cassie, I know she is horrible at responding to text, so I won't mind that. But it depends who the other.
But how do you know what? Even if it's a, even if it's someone you suspect what's happening or whatever, you never know what's really happening, right?
But there should be some boundary when you give a free pass mostly to know when to step back. Right?
I mean, I think it's worth considering, like, um, in some regard, maybe it is a pattern, maybe it's the way someone is, maybe they are trying to send a message. All of these things are possible, but if you hold an image of someone and you think it's because of something, like, you're also limiting, in a certain way, you're creating a boundary for that person too, and you're limiting what may be possible for them, or potentially getting yourself worked up, you know about something that has nothing to do with you. So what's the I guess, there's a lot to consider without having the specifics of any given situation. What is um what is the cost and the benefit of making up a story, when you really, there you say there's an answer, but there is no answer. So what's the benefit of having a story about why? And if there is a pattern at play that keeps coming up, maybe there's a different way to handle the situation than creating a story about that. Maybe there's something you can do to protect yourself, ahead of time, if it's something like that. Yeah, so I think I'm struggling to not, because I don't know all the specifics of the situation. It's very hard to give general information about that. Um, you never, like, I guess my experience is you never know what's going on in someone's life, and sometimes they don't talk about what's happening with them. They may have a lot of issues going on. It may have less to do about you and more to do about them. And that's typically what my experience is when I think something about someone, or that they're, you know not being courteous or something like that. It's usually because I quite often find out that there's something going on there in their life that I wasn't aware of, that's really um, consuming their mind, or it's difficult for them, or they're going through their own challenges, and maybe they don't want to speak about it or share that stuff, but it really does affect how they're going, like, what's going on in their life, how they're dealing with the things in front of them. I mean, obviously it's better if everybody has a clear mind and treats everybody courteously and respectful, but realistically that's not how life is. Everybody has problems. Even the people you think have it really easy, usually they have something they're not talking about. So I just try to, like, hold, even if I suspect there's like a pattern of something. Um, if you just have kind of compassion and love, but yeah, and sometimes just giving them the benefit of the doubt. There's really, if you if you really kind of hold that feeling in your heart, there's less things for you to be insecure about, as far as like whatever they're doing. Why does it have to be a comment on me? Why does it have to be a commentary on me? I can just say, you know, maybe I don't appreciate certain behavior, but then um, at the same time, I want them to uh, still be successful and figure out how to get their life on track. And maybe there's another way I can help them, or bring it to their attention, or I don't know. Or maybe you just have to let them figure it out. It's hard. That's why I'm saying my advice is not, it's one way. It's this. Yeah, like there, all of those things. It could be, you could need to draw boundaries. You might just need to give them some space. Um, it's really difficult to give general advice, and even if I had the specifics, I could give you my opinion, but it's not necessarily the best thing to do, because I really don't. Even if you told me all of the details, I still only have a map. I don't really know what's going on in every person's head. And I think if you kind of just take that stance and allow people grace to figure it out, it really, it can do a lot for you. And I think the only thing you got to be cautious is that, like, you're not, hurting yourself by allowing people to take advantage of you or something. But short of that, I think there's really not. I don't. I see very little downside in just giving people their own space to figure things out. Because even if you tell them everything that's wrong, they're not probably going to be able to fix it until they're ready to. And you telling them may or may not be helpful depending on how you say it. It might just be adding to their burden. So I think it's, if you notice, like, when you're trying to do these kind of things and help people, there's times when they're receptive and there's times when they're not. And the only way you can pick up on that is by paying attention to what's happening with them. And they usually send a cue, like they ask a question, or they say something self-reflective in front of you, like, um but sometimes people aren't ready to hear advice or change or do these things. So it's one of the harder things about uh, helping people. But I think you're right, as far as sometimes you need to have your own boundary. But what does that boundary look like when you receive a no, a non-answer from somebody, and you consider it an answer, and maybe let's just assume it's a real pattern? What does the boundary look like? Yeah.
I don't have any situation going on right now.
Okay.
So
It sounded very specific when you asked. That's why I was wondering.
most common thing that people say I've heard is no answer is an answer. So I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's someone else's story. Even just the way you said it, you've heard other people say that.
Yeah, but I have been in that place like at least till a year back when I took no answer as an answer. I don't take it anymore. But
It's some
I was in that place when no answer was an answer. And I suffered because I took it as an answer.
Mm. Yeah, I think I would say no answer is specifically not an answer, and jumping to conclusions is a slippery slope about what the answer might be. Um, why not just see how it plays out, see what happens? Maybe they never answer. Yeah, I don't know. Then that raises a whole bunch of other questions about where they are. But um, yeah,
About you made a comment about the map and the terrain, like the map is created by your like past experiences, right? Or
the map and the terrain. Okay.
but your experiences also give you like insight and wisdom, right? And
So
how to approach future situations more clearly, right? But how do you not attach yourself to that wisdom and still be in the moment?
yeah, I think it's important to consider. So the questions about the map and the terrain, but like what in some ways it's not a perfect analogy, but a map does provide information. It does, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And if you're in uncharted territory, which every situation in a certain way is, it might be, um, it might have instructions to like get over certain mountains. I'm using the map analogy here, but does it have all of the specifics about crossing every single mountain? Or do they all require a different set of skill to get over, right? So one mountain may just require, walking over a path. Another might require rock climbing equipment. Um, you can't assume just because like the last map and then on the map it looks kind of similar. You don't actually know till you're in on the ground what the situation is. And I think that's what I'm trying to bring up is that there is information, there's stuff that may be useful, but it's always good to just remember it's not an exact replica of what happened. Um, yeah, and that new different skills, different techniques, different approaches to the same situation or similar situations, even nearly identical situations, maybe different approaches can be more effective at navigating that kind of space. Um, so it's just to not be too attached to what happened, um, or to what you think is happening or to what your memories are. Uh, it's to be aware that of those the history, the memories, the past, your thoughts, the ideas, but not let them dictate what you're seeing, and just trying to see things for what they are and respond in time to what's happening with drawing from that experience, but not just repeating your experiences or thinking it's the same or assuming it's the same. It's always kind of having an open mind that things are different. Absolutely, they're different in some way. They may all work out the same, but it's a new situation. You've never been through it before, so by definition, it's different in some ways. So and I think keeping that perspective that yeah, you have all of your experience, your tools, your experience in navigating certain terrain. You can draw on that, but it's not always. There's still like there still needs to be discretion in like how you deploy what you're doing and what actions you take, and the more clear you are on what's actually happening, like the better off you're gonna be. I mean, you might encounter two, on a map or something you see, or even like even looking directly at a mountain. with a rock and you're trying to climb this rock and you're like, oh, this is so much like the one I climbed. I have all these techniques. I'm going to use the same techniques. Then you get up there and the rock starts falling out as you're pulling on it, right? So like you never know. In those situations, you really have to respond to what is happening. And if you keep trying to say like I'm going to keep doing the same thing I did on the last mountain, it's not going to work, because even though it looked exactly the same, everything appeared the same, when you touched it, it's not the same.
And I feel like in that moment that can cause you suffering.
Yeah, if you keep
And how do you, like, I've definitely been there.
yeah, if you keep doing the same thing though, knowing, even though you're like getting more and more information like this is not the same, like that's, you're gonna just increase your suffering.
For example, if you're climbing a mountain with slippers, you slip and fall. You see another same mountain, but this time you wear shoes. So are you the same person? Or you're wearing shoes this time? Yeah. You're better prepared. Yeah, but like you said, it might rain that next time, and then it's slippery and it's muddy, and now next time you wear boots. Yeah, exactly. So you can't control. But you don't know.
You don't know, and I think that's important to keep in mind. You never really know. So it's like having these things, these thoughts, these memories. You don't have to throw them away, but just don't hold them too tightly. And when the situation on the ground shows you something different, don't cling to them. Just let them go and put your mind back to what you're doing. And the more you can focus on what you're doing, the better off you're going to be. And we have a question in the chat from Nadia about any tips to being better at responding in the moment to every situation. So this is very much what you're asking about. This is kind of, I said this in very general terms. I tried to end the talk with this advice is, first of all, what I was saying, like, don't hold on too tightly to those things. You can use them, but when you're testing your assumptions and your predictions and forecasts about what to happen is going to happen, like if you're getting back information that's saying that's not it, really take that seriously. Don't keep assuming it's the same thing. Even if it's the same person in a very similar situation, so what does this look like though? I think what I was trying to point to with the talk tonight is you're in this situation, things are unfolding, it's very similar, but then you're now, even if it seems exactly the same, the way you respond makes a huge difference in what the results end up being. So if you just go through and do the same thing again and again, you may end up in the same place. Maybe you want that, and maybe that's a good thing, or maybe you want something different. My point is, like, everything's always changing and you don't necessarily know. So giving yourself space, not rushing, not jumping to conclusions. If you feel like your emotions are taking over, your thoughts are running wild, you feel fear, you feel anxiety, any of these things where you can kind of feel like you feel a discomfort. And it can take many forms. I just named, a handful of them. When you do that, take a deep breath. That's gonna give yourself space. It's gonna relax the things in your body that create that kind of negative feedback loop. It will kind of send a message to your body to reset. So slow down your breath. Just that will bring your mind back to where you are right now. Like, okay, my thoughts are out here. Try to release your thoughts. Try to relax your body. Then I was saying these questions. what is happening right now. Your mind gives you an answer. Okay, I'm not going to name it. What's happening right now? Then a different answer comes in and it feels a little bit more right. And then just ask yourself, okay, well, how do I know? Then just come back to what's actually happening. Bring your mind back to this moment. If it's not, if it's a message that's unanswered, forget about the message. Focus on what's in front of you that you need to do. That process is going to make your mind clear. That is Zen. That's the engaging with what's happening in the moment. And then that's going to give you clarity about just a clear mind. And then the answer to these questions might become very clear to you.
But how about when you're in an active situation, like talking to someone? How do you not or respond properly in that moment because you don't have that much time to
Yeah, I mean, so the question here is how do you do it when you're in an active situation? Maybe someone's arguing with you and it's heated or something like that.
especially when it's with a person you have a lot of history with, then what do you
Yeah,
usually experience?
I mean, that's very hard to do, and I think nobody's perfect, but if you can remind yourself to just take some time between your responses, take a deep breath. Sometimes just slowing down the pace of the conversation, trying to calm your nerves down can help. Sometimes you need space. You need to say, like, I don't think this is a productive or helpful conversation. I don't know how to respond. I need to I need I need some space to think about this or collect myself. Uh, you don't have to engage. Sometimes people will keep forcing it too. So it's not like, but the more, like, it's okay to withdraw from a situation, and sometimes that is the best option you have if you can't get your own emotions under control or feelings, or if you can't stop, like I've done sometimes, putting my own foot in my mouth, like saying stuff I regret saying. Like, if I see that happen a few times, I'm going to try to, like, even if my intentions are not to make it worse, sometimes you just accidentally say something that sounds insensitive or something and people take it the wrong way, even though your intentions are the right way. So, and sometimes no matter what you say, the other person just wants to fight or argue.
But sometimes it's about us, not them.
Yeah, but I think it's like really hard to have a productive conversation when it's really like that. And so I think sometimes the hardest thing to do, I find, is to create space and to give yourself space and to not keep responding back and forth. And so I think it's good to figure out, um, sometimes ways you can do that. Even if you have all of the right things to say, if the person's not being receptive, it's not going to get through if their emotions are all spun up. So sometimes you have to just, even though you're fine, you have to give them space to calm down. So these things are really hard to, like, do in real time, and I think, it's don't expect to be perfect in these situations. But, like, you can always, the more space you kind of have in your mind where you're not just letting your thoughts get run wild and then start coming out of your mouth without really processing what's happening. I think the more you can do that, uh, you know, my I find I have better, more successful, more fruitful conversations.
How do you stop that point?
What one?
The one before we have a fruitful conversation.
How do you stop? I mean, I think
And just thoughts keep, like, whatever you're thinking just keeps coming out.
I mean, I really like sometimes I just have to take a deep breath. And sometimes if someone even if someone sees you doing that, sometimes it sends a message to them like that you need space. Um so yeah, I don't think it's not an easy situation. This is one of the hardest things you deal with, especially when you have like emotional connections to people. Um so so I think that the best thing is kind of like there's certain situations you get into and when you get there, it's like you already missed a bunch of opportunities to withdraw or to like calm it down. And so learn from those as well. Like sometimes it's like resisting the urge to say something early on can really head off a lot of those things. And so kind of learning about where these kind of conversations go off the hook and
But is, how are you being in the moment though if you're resisting?
if you're resisting what
Creating a boundary.
what's the problem with creating a boundary? I said boundaries are okay. I said that specifically tonight.
No, you said putting a boundary, like your thoughts can create a boundary.
Your thoughts can create a boundary, and they do create boundaries. That's essentially what they do. They create stories, they create boundaries, they create.
And I think they create shackles, not boundaries.
The point is like just recognizing that that's what your thoughts are doing sometimes is enough, and um, learning how to use them effectively, uh, but also recognizing that like that is what's happening. It's not that you're the problem is when you think that um, your mind made up this idea, this like firm story about yourself, like this is who I am. I don't take crap from anybody. Like I give it, I don't take it. Like, you can create all of these stories about yourself. Those are creating like boundary conditions, things, lines you're not going to let people cross. Um, I think it's just recognizing that those are boundaries you created and that like you can just as easily take them away. But you have control over that. So having control over the situation, not just being like this is who I am, that's how it is. If you don't like it, that's tough, whatever. Like you can have all these narratives about yourselves, but like the more you can not cling to those narratives, the more flexibility you have, the more openness you have. Yeah, you might still want to say like I'm drawing a line here, but if someone comes to that line and with a different um you might benefit in some way from letting them cross the line. And or maybe you need to put it somewhere sooner that you wouldn't normally put it. So it's like learning that those are all flexible, and the most just realizing that that's what they are, and you have some power over that. You have some agency over it, and they don't have to be rigid. They can be flexible. They can have some give. They can have some take. They can have some push. They can have some give. They can. Um, so it's learning like what is called for in every moment, and not just sticking to something because that's the way you think it is.
I
Does
definitely feel like I've been in situations where like I would have more of an open mind and the other person has like a full mind or the anxious mind or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
and like you're experiencing the same exact thing, but yeah, there's like that boundary and like suffering that the other person is experiencing that you're not. And yeah, like in that situation, it almost causes you suffering because you're witnessing someone not being in the moment. I've experienced that too, and it's like, whoa, why aren't you seeing the situation how it is? And like you said, you have to give that person their own time.
Yeah,
I
and
learned that lesson, but like
you can't you
it's a very like
yeah,
difficult situation when you're like when you're in the moment experiencing that with someone who's not able to experience that.
yeah, you can't really you can't force someone else to do it.
Yeah.
And if a lot of people yeah, it's just when their emotions are spun up, it's really hard to do it. It's not, honestly, that's not the time to learn. The time to learn is when things are easier. And then you get better. Like you come to a class like this, you practice when it's like kind of mellow, you like develop a skill set. It's like if you need to um yeah, if you need to learn how to like sprint fast, you don't just like learn how to sprint fast when someone's chasing you and like have it work. Like if you've been out of shape your whole life, it's just not going to work. But if you've been running a little bit every day and like practicing, like then when it comes time to sprint, you can sprint. It's no, it's not there. It's like a similar kind of skill. You have to develop it. It like you can maybe have some natural ability, but for most people, um, it doesn't come naturally. It's something you have, or if it did, you forgot how to do it, and then you have to relearn it at some point. And yeah, it's hard. Like it's harder to learn under duress. It's easier to learn when things are easy. So a lot of people wait till something bad happens and then they're like, I need to change, and then it's really difficult to change. So um
I think the situation you're describing in that moment, the only way to ease suffering for you and the other person is to just acknowledge their anxiety and just be there with them because that's the only thing they know. You can't do anything to see them the other way in that moment. So the only thing is to just acknowledge and be there with them.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think I'll just like kind of follow up on that is like sometimes when people are really worked up and in an elevated emotional state and they aren't listening, they aren't seeing reality for what it is. And this is a slippery slope too. You don't always want to necessarily do this, but sometimes like it's not that they need to hear the truth or hear you explain it to them. They almost just need like a hug or like to be met emotionally or uh just to have you acknowledge like, oh, like I see this is affecting you negatively, and just like acknowledge their pain, even though you could like theoretically you could tell them everything that's wrong and how to fix it. It's just like those times aren't the right time. Sometimes it's just like just acknowledge that you're hurting, you're in pain. Like why not just take it? Why not just let's go away from this for a while. Let's take a break. Let's come back to it. Let's revisit it. Um, let's put this behind us. Let's move on. I don't mean some of those things can feel dismissive. So this is another reason you need to have a clear mind. It's like what is the right thing to say at the right time. But a lot of times I find people, because I get people who come to me from like arguing with people they love, and they're saying, well, this is the situation. Obviously, they're not seeing it correctly. I know I'm right, and I'll say it doesn't matter if you're right. They want to be heard, and they just want to know you're listening, and they want to know you hear that they're not having a good time. Maybe they're not verbalizing why, but I think the fact that they are having a distressed response is worthy of acknowledging. And maybe at another time you could, when things are more calm, you can talk about the actual issue. But like when they're worked up, telling them you're wrong, this is the way it is, like it hardly ever works out. I'll just put it that way. So a lot of times people just need to feel um, heard and felt, and everybody thinks they're logical, but most people are extremely emotional and don't realize that about themselves. They make decisions, they do things out of emotion, and so sometimes it's like an emotional meeting more than like a logical thing that's required. But I think having my own mind clear has allowed me to see that sometimes, because I was definitely more the type of person to see things logically and try and explain it and then have that backfire multiple times. Um, and then I saw it in myself too. Like I would be doing something irrational or saying something I didn't really mean, and it was because I just didn't feel like I was being heard, and so I said stuff that I knew they would hear, but it wasn't really like logical, true, or rational. So I think I think everybody has these tendencies, and the more aware you are of yourself and what's happening and how these thought processes play out, the better you are at kind of managing them in real time. So we had one more question. Do you feel that I don't know mind gives you the space and relaxation to see clearly? Um, I think it can certainly. Uh, it could be helpful to have that type of humility. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily as a fix all to everything, but I think keeping that open-mindedness that there are there are things you don't know. There's always things you don't know. Um, Even if you do know things, like how do you actually know these things? Like how certain are you about the things you think you know? Um, I think these can all be helpful ways to get a different point of view and get you out of your own train of thought, kind of disrupt the stream of thoughts that won't stop flowing, and get you to kind of question, take a step back, and maybe see it from a different perspective. So that was a little bit about what I was trying to do with the meditation, is just focusing on what's here, trying to disrupt your mind from answering it with words, and then when it does, like really asking, like, how do you even know, even about what's here in this room with no emotions and like nothing. I mean, it's even difficult to do in an extremely controlled situation, but it's sharpening that tool that when you're under distress and duress, now you've practiced this tool. Like you took some deep breaths, you asked, how do I know? You resisted the urge to put words to it, and then you questioned like how you know. I think those are little tools that you can have in your belt. I mean, they're not necessarily going to work all the time, but it doesn't have to work exactly in the way we laid out. It's kind of just designed to help you have awareness about how this is working, looking at your own, like experiencing your own thought process, and like how even in a simple situation, things that seem so clear and easy, your mind can still run away, and still your thoughts can still run wild. They can still try to explain so many different things about something so simple as just sitting and meditating and the sense stimulations you're getting. Um, so
So to respond to that question, do you think showing compassion is having being open, being more open
I think
at
that,
moment.
yeah, I think having an open mind and allowing your self to see things from different perspectives definitely will help you be more compassionate.
Not attaching yourself to one.
Yeah, if you're completely attached to your own point of view and it's the only way you'll see things, it's really hard to be compassionate because you only see things from your perspective. If you can put yourself, like there's a saying, put yourself in someone else's shoes, then you might feel like, oh, like I didn't see it from that perspective. It must be difficult.
Yeah, and sometimes that causes you suffering in that, I feel like, in that moment.
Yeah, if I was in their shoes, I would just want a hug, or I would
Yeah.
just want something like, uh, I would just want them to listen and not say anything, and just hear, like, just let me vent, and not try to give me advice, even though it's so tempting. Sometimes people just want to do that. So they're yeah. So I do think that that really will help, and I think, yeah, just first of all, just loosening up your own perspective, not being so firm about your own beliefs and identities and opinions about things. That's step one. But then, yeah, like being able to maybe see things from other people's perspectives, and even that is going to be a little misleading. You never really 100% can see it from someone else's shoes, but it's always it can be helpful to try and visualize any situation from different perspectives, whether it's an engineering task or a personal task or something at work, or if you're at work, and you're designing something, you want to see it from the customer's perspective, right? Because that's what you're so, like, if you're in a conversation, sometimes it might be helpful to see it from another perspective, from a third person's perspective, or but yeah, to a certain degree, you're always you're still, even that is imperfect and can have its own set of issues too. But I think just being, yeah, more open, more flexible about your own opinions, beliefs, and ideas, not throwing them away, just understanding they have limits. Okay, well, thank you so much for all coming out tonight. And if you'd like to find out more about the school, our Zen training, our inner circle memberships, and the rest of our schedule, check out the mindlightway.org. And thank you all for coming. If you are watching and you'd like to leave a donation, the information about how to do that is in the description, and your generosity is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Take care.